This is Redacted. Ladies and gentlemen, it is far beyond an honor and a great privilege to be here. Our guest this fine evening is a one-of-a-kind living legend of radio, Art Bell. Author, National Radio Hall of Fame inductee, Guinness World Record holder for endurance broadcasting, and pioneer of late-night talk radio who once held 15 million listeners on over 500 affiliate radio stations spellbound every night. Well, I'm here to tell you that the king of the nighttime is back. He is now free, and he wants to take you for a ride on July 20th with his new show, Midnight in the Desert. Thank you for joining us tonight, Art.
You're very welcome. Good to be here. I'm going to take you for a ride, all right? I've got all these people who've joined, sent $5 each. So the ride is going to be, I'm headed for Mexico with their money.
Are you really? You got plans already?
That's right. I'm beyond the way.
I want to share something with you from your website. I don't know if you've seen this, but it was a comment that really sums it up for everybody, I think. It was a gentleman named William who said, "Art, you are so desperately needed to rescue the genre you invented that it's almost an emergency. I know I, along with millions of others, welcome this news with great anticipation. There are precious few people who have ever warranted hundreds of hours of my listening time, and you have always been one of them. Godspeed." And I think that's what
wonderful.
Everyone would say.
An emergency. That's interesting.
It is. That's the word that was used.
Well, you see, I view myself as just a normal guy. I really do.
Just a talk show host.
Just a talk show host, that's all. And so if it's an emergency for me to come back, then it must mean that some terrible stuff is going on out there.
Well, I'm very curious. What new show elements, if there are any that you can reveal, will you be bringing to Midnight in the Desert?
All right. I think I can talk about this. I'm sort of mentally chewing it over right now. One of the things I'm going to do, I think every other show in the world, certainly those carried by terrestrial radio stations, have news at the top of the hour, typically Associated Press or whoever, 5 minutes of news. So I thought, how boring is that? Let's do something a little different. We're going to have news, all right. But I connected with a wonderful guy who worked for the old Mutual News and still does news for about 40 or 50 stations every day. And he's a fan. And I said, what about the idea of doing, oh, sure, you know, if 150 million people suddenly get hacked and all their information is suddenly public, that we'll run that at the beginning of the newscast. But the moment the big story of the day is over, the rest of the newscast is going to be paranormal.
Paranormal news.
Paranormal news. It's going to sound just like an ABC radio newscast. But instead of running it at the top of the hour, when everybody else is running news, we're going to run it at the bottom of the hour, when they're doing commercials and whatever else they do at the bottom of the hour. So we're going to flip it completely. I don't think anybody's ever done, I'm sure people come on with paranormal news of one sort or another, but this is going to be a packaged 5-minute paranormal newscast. A little bit different, I'd say.
I'd say that is a little bit different. I've never heard of anybody doing that, and what I imagine is someone searching the radio dial, because you will be on 21 selected stations throughout the country. So you're traveling up and down the dial on the bottom of the hour when you don't want to hear the boring commercials break that's going, and then you're
going to bump into this newscast, and you're going to go, what the heck?
And that's going to capture the listeners.
It will, and it will add to the program. In other words, I may hear something during that newscast that then merits talking about with my guest or with open lines.
So you're going to open up Paranormal Pandora's box with
Absolutely.
this newscast. I
Yes.
think that is a great new thing to add to the show that has not ever been done before, and that is where your talents lie, is that pioneering spirit that brings new things to radio that have never been done before.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to do anything. You know, I'm free. I'm free.
Completely
I have
free
no
now
corporate
with your
bosses.
new network.
I am my own boss, so God knows what I may do. I don't know. We'll find out.
Prepare yourself, ladies and gentlemen. So some of us know this already, but I'd like to hear it from you and listeners who may not know how to tune in.
Interesting question. Well, of course, the main way, the network is called it's digital, right?
Dark Matter Digital Network.
That's right. So the main way will be through, and the easy way will be through TuneIn. If you have an Apple product or an Android product or a tablet of some sort, you download TuneIn, which is free. It gives you access to thousands of radio stations, and we are one of those. So, piece of cake. And by the way, everybody, I recommend that you go and get those earbuds that arrived with whatever, instrument you've got, and use the earbuds because we're going to be in living stereo. So it's going to be kind of cool. It's going to sound really good. The quality of the audio is going to knock your socks off. It's going to be excellent. So that's the way I want everybody to listen. And I will go on there and I will sell earbuds if I have to to get people to listen.
And headsets with microphones to call in on.
Well, yeah, you know what? Here's what I want everybody who has not yet done it to do. Go out, if you don't have an Apple product or an Android, and you probably do because most everybody does, download Skype and put it on that product, because you can call me using that and you'll sound really, really good. The audio quality will be mwah, unlike distant cellular broken up connections that I'm used to. If you call me using Wi-Fi with your phone or your tablet, it's gonna sound good, preferably a phone. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to the international aspect of what we're gonna do.
Worldwide, anybody, not like Sirius that was confined to North America.
It was one of the problems. They originally told me that they had a streaming service which covered the world. Mm-hmm. And that is only sort of a partial truth. It covers the US and Canada. And as for the rest of the world, if you have a credit card from the US and a US address, you can probably get service. Otherwise, no. This is so good that my wife's mother, that lives in the southernmost Philippine island, mm-hmm. can flip on her phone and listen to the show.
Just that easy.
It's that easy.
Wow.
It's kind of like ham radio. I mean, we're going to be hearing from people everywhere in the world. So
there truly are no limits to the listeners. And
None
when
at
you
all.
say worldwide on ye old internet this time, boy, is that ever true.
It sure is. South Africa, call in. England, France, call in. Japan, call in. And believe me, we'll hear from all those places.
Boy, that's going to be so interesting to hear about Art Bell fans who have longed for you to come back on the air in different countries, and for them to find out that you're back and then to call. Boy, that's just going to be a great time on the radio.
I think the international aspect of it is, part of the ham radio in me. Mm-hmm. I love hearing from far away places.
Far away places.
Sure.
The farther the better.
That's right.
Right, yes. So I'm really curious about something else too. I mean, times have changed. Technology has grown a little bit out of its infancy, and I'm wondering if you can share with us the differences in your studio setup now versus back in the 90s.
It's completely different. Back in the 90s, I played commercials on cart machines, tape. Back then I had,
unfortunate
I think I had about 13 phone lines connected to my house. We did deliver the show in a pretty decent way using satellite. But now, the difference today is that everything I have is dependent on the internet. Phone lines, the Skype connections, literally the show itself going from here to Keith Rowland, and then Keith Rowland to TuneIn. There'll be any number of ways to listen. Oh, and I might mention, we've got 2 shortwave radio stations that are going to be carrying the show too.
Certainly do.
I get a lot of calls from people who say, oh, I want to hear it on the radio. Oh, I want to hear it on the radio. It's got to be on the radio. So those people, if they wish, can get a shortwave radio, and sure enough, they'll hear us.
Well, I'm sure that's what all the cool kids will be doing.
The cool kids will probably be on an iPhone. But some of the people who love radio will indeed listen to shortwave.
Well, for the people that are getting really amped up and really charged and excited over this, I'd like to remind everyone that you are doing an open lines test this Sunday, July 19th.
That's right.
And I'm wondering if you can share your thoughts with us on what the journey was like to get to this moment for the last couple of years.
Well, I think everybody is somewhat familiar with the difficulties that I had with Sirius XM. The streaming service was not all they said it was.
A lot of people reported problems.
They did.
With that.
They really did. And they were getting cut off. And my listener base came from terrestrial radio.
Yes.
So almost all of them, not all, but most all of them, subscribed to the streaming aspect of Sirius XM.
Just to hear you.
Yes, as opposed to going and buying a radio and putting an antenna outside. That's what they did. They had a 90-day free trial. At the end of that time, they had to pony up $180 or so for a year. And frankly, when they were getting cut off fairly frequently, asking for that much money was a problem. So a lot of the listener base dropped off. That's not really fair to say. A lot of what was my listener base dropped off. I had virtually every truck driver in the world listening. That too was a problem because while I love the truckers, about 80 to 90% of the time when you take calls, you'd get a good old boy going down the road who had a cellular connection that was,
Iffy.
Yeah, a little iffy. And so it made it difficult. And I sort of went back to Sirius XM and said, listen, please fix your streaming. Allow us to stream for free until you get it fixed.
Yes, I remember that.
And they said, no. I said, oh, please, just until you get it fixed, and then we can go back to the pay. They said no, and that's when I said, okay, goodbye.
That was a hard no.
It was indeed. Looks like listeners are trying to call a little bit early here, so we'll take care of that quite quickly. Anyway, I said no, and that cost me 2 years. 2 years of patiently waiting for time to pass, and it wasn't easy.
There was a lot of talk. There was a lot of
2 years of my life gone, my broadcast life gone. But I had to make a decision. It was a very, very, very hard decision, believe me.
There was a lot of weight behind it when you said, well, we're either all in.
I said, I'm all in. And when I said I'm all in, it was when I gave them that
ultimatum.
Ultimatum, I guess, would be the right word, yes. And it came back, no, I was frankly quite surprised. I thought it was going to be a yes.
It doesn't seem like too much to ask to me.
Well, I'm with you.
Keep an audience, to keep a great show on the air,
right.
To keep your talent on the air, and keep providing that great content for a company like Sirius that seems to have pretty deep pockets, just allowing for that audience to remain connected and the content to be continued to be put out there, a few months of a free stream while they get that stream a little more stable. Seems like a responsible business decision, but again, that could be
Their
way
comment
above
was,
my pay
we
grade.
only want exclusive content.
Whether the streaming is stable or not.
Right. So they were unwilling to sort of release it to everybody for even a short period of time that it would have taken for them to fix things up and getting them to run right. So anyway, that was it. I was all in. It didn't work, and it cost me 2 years.
And this entire 2 years, you've been preparing for
Well,
July
you may recall that I said at the time, don't worry, in 2 years I will come back and I will put up a free show.
I remember.
And that's
very
what it is.
clearly.
It's free, and it's free to everybody. Now, that does mean that enough people have to join what we call the time travelers.
Yes, the Time Traveler subscription is only $5.
Is only $5. You don't have to join. It's free to listen. But if you do join, that will then allow you to download the show at your convenience, listen to it anytime you want. It will allow you to send me a message during the show and ask the guest a question. So those were two little perks that we thought we could throw in and ask $5. And the people paying that will support the other people getting it for free. And I wanted to be on a venue that was competitive, frankly, with George Norrie and what they're doing over at iHeartRadio. It is essentially a free show to listen to, and again, they of course also have some sort of club that allows you to download, so
Yes,
it's very
they
much like
sure
that.
do. Yeah.
And this allows me to be competitive. I can reach as many people as they can reach with 600 radio stations.
With your setup the way it is now, you
Absolutely.
can reach just as many people,
Perhaps
and even
more.
worldwide.
Perhaps more.
Perhaps more.
Now, I'm not saying I'm going to do that. I'm not crazy enough to think that I'm going to start out that way. I'm not. Probably going to start out with 10 or 20,000 people, and then it'll grow. If it's a good program, it'll grow. Simple as that.
I can't see it doing anything but taking off like a rocket straight into space.
Well, here's my thinking. I'm one of those people. I carry an iPhone around with me on my hip. Other people carry Androids or whatever, all else. It's kind of like everybody's carrying a little portable radio with them. Now, how often anymore do you see somebody walking down the street with a portable radio plastered to their ear?
Never.
No, that's right, next to never. However, you do see people with these little guys.
Everybody's tapping
Everybody's
on their phone.
got one.
Everybody's the
That's
face is
right.
lit by the light of the phone
So
anymore.
the potential is there for everybody. It is a technological revolution, and we're going to ride that wave.
And once again, you've spotted a trend and are going to grab onto that trend and show everybody how it's done.
That's correct.
Well, I think you've got an excellent plan, and I think this is going to solve the radio emergency that currently stands.
I'm not sure I would have described it as an emergency, but I am pleased to be coming back and returning a sane dialogue to the paranormal.
It deserves to be treated seriously, taken seriously, and people that have had significant paranormal experiences in their life deserve to have a venue to bring those experiences, shouldn't say to the light of day, maybe more to the light of the moon, because this is going to be happening at night where it should happen, and where these things are best talked about is in the night, during the nighttime.
Oh, I think so. So I suspect we'll hear about people with their little iPhones or Androids lying beside them on the bed, I hope with earbuds in their ear, listening to something that's very, very different.
It's going to be the most different show out there. Honestly, there's people that try to do this, but this brings me to one of my questions that I really wanted to ask you. You were the one who made the paranormal mainstream. You took it seriously, and
I do take it seriously.
I'm very curious as how do you feel about all of the TV shows, movies, podcasts that have been made that are clearly influenced by your years on Coast?
Well, it only measures the level of interest, which is very, very high. An awful lot of the new shows, perhaps a third of them, are doing something connected to the paranormal. X-Files offshoots. Isn't it interesting, by the way, that the X-Files returns, as do I, just about the same time?
Yes, that has not passed me by. It's really interesting. Some of us, because of course I'm on BellGab, and some of us on BellGab have started to ask ourselves what year it really is. Is this 2015 or is this 1995 all over again?
It's not going to be 1995 all over again. I don't know what I'm going to do on the air this time, but it's not going to be what I did. It's going to have echoes of what I did. It's going to sound kind of like what I did. The familiar voices will be back. Ross Mitchell, for example, my announcer.
Certainly hope so. It wouldn't be the same without
my
him.
Bumper music, I refused to come back without having some arrangement for the bumper music that I love. It's part of the show. It's part of the mood. And I wouldn't do it without it.
Right, right. So you're going to be getting a lot of new listeners.
Yes.
With this new show, you're reaching a brand new worldwide audience. And, there's some things from your days on Coast that are going to be leaking into the new show, such as, there's this thing about Art's Parts. And I would really like you to just sort of talk about that a little bit for your new listeners. Describe Art's Parts, please.
It was sent to me out of the blue. I received a lot of mail, and a package came in addressed to me one day, many years ago. And inside was a letter from a gentleman who claimed that he was delivering to me in this package parts from the crash at Roswell. And they were odd-looking things made up, we've now found out, of bismuth and magnesium layers that actually cannot be duplicated now. We've had it to every major lab in the United States, and they've tried to duplicate it, they've tried to grow it, they've tried to manufacture it. It can't be done.
Cannot be reproduced.
No,
as materials.
It cannot be reproduced. So we don't know what it is or where it came from, but we do know that it's got some odd aspects to it, and it can't be reproduced. So I don't know what I've got. I've got something strange. Art's Parts. I went on Larry King, handed...
I saw that.
You may recall I handed Larry
I saw
a little bit of Art's Parts, and he quickly slipped it in his pocket. And I think I asked him if he really wanted to have more children, and it really came out of his pocket quickly.
I saw that too. Yes, he brought that right up out of his pocket quick.
So Art's Parts remains a mystery. I don't know.
I remember the idea was...
Linda Howe did a lot of the testing.
She did. Did they ever subject any of the parts to high voltage?
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
Were there any results on that? Did you get any results on that?
Yes, it moved around. I believe they actually lifted one of the pieces into the air with high voltage. It was really odd. I've got some of the video.
One of the pieces levitated. So these are allegedly pieces of the craft.
That's what it said. That's what the letter said, yes.
Wow. And it's those metals have never been able to be reproduced.
That's true.
That's very fascinating. It's still very, very fascinating, and I bet some of the new listeners won't know about that story, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I have another one. And this is one of my personal burning questions, actually. Do you still have your time machine?
No, it got lost in a move.
It did.
It may be in my garage, but I haven't seen it. I was afraid to plug it in. I'm pretty familiar with electronics, and I examined this thing carefully, and it was designed to be plugged into a wall outlet. And I did plug it in briefly, but it got so hot that it scared me, and I turned it off. And that's the truth.
Wow. I would get scared too if I had something someone said was a time machine, plugged it in, and now you're starting to smell burning metal or burning plastic.
Well, actually, yes. There was some of that. Kind of an odd smell, and it got too hot to touch.
Wow, that's spooky. So, speaking of time machines, will Mr. Madman be back for an update? Mr. Madman Markham?
You know, all these years, I have saved Madman's phone number. And I called him 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So he is in this dimension?
He is, and he's working on a bigger, more powerful version of his time machine. And where he's getting the parts, I probably don't want to know.
We don't want to know.
But I have asked him to come on the show, and he said, well, I have trouble with my cell phone, and you'd think if you can build a time machine, you'd have a cell phone that works.
Get your cell phone to work.
Nevertheless, he is willing to come on the program. So at some point, we'll probably have Madman back. The interesting part of his story, of course, was that it was verified. In other words, he came on and told us that he was about to build this time machine, that he had stolen transformers from the power company in order to do this.
He browned out the town that he lived in, I believe.
Actually, his parole officer,
arresting officer, called
the program.
Yes.
That's right, and verified the whole story.
Yes,
so
I recall.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it was, and I'm happy to know that he is in our dimension and is back in our timeline.
Whether he remains in our dimension, and in fact on this earth, I think is of some question.
I think that will always be of some question, but I hope you get him on the air for an update before he decides
Before he electrocutes himself.
Well, before he either turns into a human barbecue or decides to go and visit Woodstock, like we'd all like to do. So,
well, there's a fact you didn't know.
What is that?
I was at Woodstock.
You were at Woodstock?
I was.
For the entire 3 days?
No, I was not there for 3 days. I was coming back from the military. I had been discharged from the military, and I hitchhiked across from, I was discharged in California.
Okay.
And I hitchhiked across, and as I was coming, I kept hearing about this big thing is going to happen in New York, you know.
Had to be the biggest news.
It was big news. And so I made it to Woodstock, but when I got there, it was kind of winding down, and oh my God, it was muddy, it was raining.
I've seen these pictures.
Yes,
Oh, it looks, yeah.
So I wasn't there for a long time, but I actually was at Woodstock.
Went to Woodstock. So was there a performance that stands out for you? What did you get to see when you were there?
You know, it was winding down. What I remember most is mud.
Mud.
I had mud all over me.
And a bunch of laughing, dancing hippies, right?
Yes.
Right? Well, It still sounds like a good time. So are you going to have to keep your topics and guests secret until the day of each show? How is that going to work?
I wish it were not so. But from my experience at Sirius XM, I determined that the folks over at the competing network were instructing, let me see how I can put this, were suggesting to guests that they might not want to be on with me if they wish to continue to be on that show.
Other show.
Yes, that other show. That was said by a couple of gals called
The Ghostbuster gals.
The Ghostbuster gals. That's correct. They actually said that on the air. So it's not so much me saying that as me remembering they said that.
Right. Right. So because of that, you are going to have to keep your plans secret.
Right. We actually have about a month booked. A month booked. I'm going to be holding Fridays open for open lines. And when I say open lines, I mean unscreened open lines.
When you hit the button, caller's on the air.
You've been in the studio. You can see I have no screener. I have no ability to screen, nor do I want to screen.
Right. It would take away
It takes away
magic.
a lot. Because a screener, if they think somebody sounds, well, a little off, they eliminate them before they ever hit the air, right?
And that's way too polished.
And you're going to lose, well, not only is it too polished, but you're going to lose some of the better calls. You may not think they're better calls when you take them, but as you get into somebody who sounds like they might, you know, have not quite the elevator at the top, you suddenly find out that, ooh, gee, this is interesting. I mean, that's how I found a fellow who had trapped a ghost.
Rodney.
That's how Rodney, yes, oh, you've got a very good memory. But what I don't want to do with this program, and it's good to say in this interview so that all of you hear it, I don't want to spend all my time reminiscing about things in the past. This is about new stuff.
Going ahead.
That's right.
On and forward.
That's right. Evelyn Paglini is no longer with us.
Sorely missed.
So I'm going to have to find a new witch.
Lori Cabot.
I don't want just any witch. I want, as I originally said, a cauldron-stirring,
broom-flying,
real McCoy witch.
Yes.
That's right. And Evelyn Paglini not only turned out to be that, but she turned out to be, I would say, the most accurate prognosticator of anybody I've had on the air.
Her predictions were scarily spot on.
Yes, they were.
I remember her making a prediction about fires in California.
That's right.
And lo and behold, those fires did happen. And every time I saw more news coverage of those fires, I had to think of her voice. And it really made the blood run cold that what is she tapped into that she knows these things. So then I had to go back and listen to everything she said and start taking notes.
Right, and I'm sure that your eyes opened when you realized what her hit rate was.
Yes, because most have a hit rate equal to a coin flip.
At best.
Right, right. And she's sadly no longer with us, and I think unless you were to find another practicing witch, the best way to run across radio gold like that again is to open up the lines and make the call.
Correct.
And have a witch line. And boy, is that going to be a good time.
And that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. You know, I'm free. I can do anything I want. So expect the unexpected from me.
Especially from Art Bell. Well, here's something I want to just share with you from Bell Gab because, you know, now that you are free, you don't have corporate bosses, you got Dark Matter Digital Network is going to be your new home. And with new technology these days, there's a concern about pirates. So I'm here to tell you that we have a team of very capable hackers and sleuths and internet web crawlers, to use a really, really old term from back in the day. We will be hunting down pirated streams, YouTube videos of the show that get put up, torrents, because do you know about torrents?
I know about torrents.
Well, you can probably take all of your shows, record them, put it in a torrent, and people can just download it, and there goes your subscription. So where can we send links to notify you of pirated versions of Midnight in the Desert?
How cool is this? My producer, Dr. J, is also, well, he's been to law school.
Has he?
Oh, yes. So the people that we have recruited, what better place to go than Belgab, where there's probably plenty of pirates?
Oh, yes. We have our own collection of pirates.
The best people to catch pirates are pirates.
Yes.
And then they will report to Dr. J, ultimately, who will fire off the appropriate legal better stop or else type letter.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I think we'll be able to, with the team that we have, and, you know, our
Look,
Bell fans are very loyal.
It's not, yes, they are. It's not just that, but it's, you know, a lot of people who are joining wouldn't go to the trouble to listen to a pirated version, you know, for $5 a month. My goodness, you can download every program so easily and then listen to it at your leisure. For example, I think a lot of truck drivers are going to do that. They're going to go to a truck stop somewhere. They're going to download the show, and then they're going to listen to it while they're on the road. So I think that even though there will be piracy, we know it's going to be a problem. I think that a lot of people who pay the $5 just don't care. So we will go after the pirates, make no mistake, but I don't think it's an issue.
We're behind you on that. I just want you to know, and we will probably be finding links to pirated versions of Midnight in the Desert, and just wanted everyone to know where to send the alert to once those links are found. And so I appreciate sharing that. We can send those links to Dr. J, and he'll take care of business.
He's already got the forms all set to fire out.
Ready to go. So, open lines.
Yes.
You have a big fan by the name of J.C. Webster the third.
Yes.
And I am just dying to know, and this is a personal question, but I mean, just from me that I've been thinking about for so long in the months leading up to this, July 20th, your first show. Are you going to bring back the demon voice changer that you had?
I don't know. I may. It's kind of a technical nightmare.
Yeah.
I did it before, and I may bring it back. I don't know. You don't need a demon voice changer to get JC going, though. That's for sure.
You don't, but...
And he will be going because he is a Facebook friend. Now, I want to dispel any even suggestion that I ever have set up anything on the air. JC, he came out of nowhere, just the way all of my other guests and callers have come out of nowhere. JC is a special case. I think case would be the right word.
Yes.
And
yes.
My recollection is when I was on Sirius XM, JC sure did pick an odd time to call. I think we had just done 2.5 hours with Linda of this very serious show.
Oh, and
the first call I picked up was JC screaming bloody murder at me about being the devil. And Linda just stopped, and she was silent for a while, and she began laughing. It was a moment, you know, after 2.5 hours of hard science, and you pick up the first call, and it's JC.
Right out of the gate.
That's right.
Straight out of the gate.
That's right.
JC.
Stop me cold. I went, oh my God. Well, that tells you we don't screen calls.
Well, if anything's going to tell us the calls are unscreened, it's definitely that.
Yes.
But I was just curious. But you're right. You don't need a whole lot to get him going. And I wonder about how much coffee that guy has.
You need a lot
day.
to stop him.
You do. It takes more than just an emergency brake.
And there are probably other JC types out there.
Oh, I can't wait to see who they are, and I can't wait to hear them call in. And
you know, what I do is not that special. I'm just me. That's it. I'm honestly not that special. I've got a bit of a technical background. Yes, I know a little bit about the paranormal. I'm not an expert.
I don't think it's that you need to be an expert. I think it's that you take the subject matter seriously. You allow people to explain their experiences.
Some people I allow to hang themselves, frankly.
Well, that happens. That occasionally happens.
You know, if they're a little bit off the normal wagon, I generally encourage them to continue down the road they're on until they finally hoist themselves up.
It's always a good story, though.
It's always a good story.
It's always
That's right.
a good
That's right.
story. And you've always sort of brought these topics to the table, presented them, and let the listeners form their own opinion.
Absolutely.
You know, you're not
and I
pushing an
think
opinion.
that Bell Gab, for example, is full of a lot of very bright people. Some not so much, but the majority pretty bright people. And you can tell, I think if you listen to my voice long enough, you can tell when I'm speaking beyond a guest to the audience.
Yes, you can pick up on that very easily.
Right. So listen for that.
We will have our ears perked for this for sure. And so our listeners going to have to turn off their streaming device when you take their call on the air?
They are. Turn off that streaming device. Sure, as a matter of fact, there's going to be quite a delay between the time I say something and it actually gets to the device. About 30 seconds, actually.
30 seconds this time.
Yes.
So that's a little bit longer
It is than broadcast,
time to
yes.
watch your career flash before your eyes.
Well, no. We still only have 7 seconds of career time.
I see.
In other words, I've got a button I can push on my phone, and that will trigger a 7-second delay, which will collapse the last 7 seconds of what was said. And that's the 7 seconds you have to consider your career.
And
Bad language is not a problem. I don't allow it on the program. That is a rule. No bad language.
right.
I suppose an occasional this or that might leak through, but it's not the problem. The problem is if somebody were to, for example, say Joe Blow is a murderer or a child molester.
That's libel.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Potentially a problem. A bad word every now and then, well, not so much.
Right. Well,
I'm not, by the way, no bad words, folks.
want to run a clean program. Well, because
It's not
the
necessary.
audience is so
I
varied.
listen to the internet shows a lot.
Yes.
And they are filled with absolutely filthy language. I think when talk show hosts somehow get on the internet, they think they're free, and so let's say every bad word.
So the rules go straight out the window.
It's awful. It's absolutely awful. I want families to listen.
Right, exactly. And that's what I was going to say. You've said this many times that your audience varies from age 8 to age 80.
And they do.
And you would want to appeal to all of them.
And I do.
remember on Dark Matter when a young, I think, 9-year-old boy
Absolutely.
called in with a
Yes.
question. And you said it exactly right. You know, this is a perfect demonstration of why we keep it clean. And there's another thing you've said that pops to mind is that there are so many words in the English language. You should be able to find and use those words rather than a foul language to make your point or punctuate a point that you're trying to make, that you really don't need to use
Right.
those
I really
words.
think bad language is a crutch for people who can't find another word.
That's what it is. That's what it was that I've heard you refer to several times. So
Not only that, but if you listen to these shows that are doing this, after a while, even if you're an adult and you've heard these words before, it's no big deal.
Right.
It becomes pretty tedious.
and tiresome.
It does,
and in a
yes.
strange way exhausting.
Yes.
When
yes.
you're listening to a program to, I don't know, maybe take your mind off into another place or be uplifted by a program. It seems like if you're listening to, that every other third word, that it tends to wear you out in a strange way
It really
as you're
does.
listening. To listen to a long 3-hour program of that would just...
And consider, I'm the dad now of an 8-year-old girl. Asia Bell.
Asia.
And if I had this running in the background and 3 F-bombs came suddenly out of the radio, if I didn't shut it off, I can assure you my wife would immediately.
Yes.
So yes, I want the young audience and I want the older audience. And frankly, a lot of older people are also offended by bad language. So what's the point? Why do you want to offend listeners?
I think it's just the mark of a quality program. And some of my fellow bell gabbers may call me stuffy for that opinion. But
I've seen a large argument erupt about that on Bell Gab, and some people think that you have to use bad language to be hip. And that's been the argument on Bell Gab, and I think they're full of it.
I gotta agree with that. Not just because you're Art Bell, but I like to see a quality program out there, and I'm frankly tired of it. Honestly, it's tiring. That's something for, when you stub your toe on the coffee table leg in the middle of the night. That's not for a radio program. So I kind of like to delve into something here just to sort of leave the listeners hungry and ready to begin this new show.
Okay.
We are almost in the quickening 2.0. And I'd like to get some of your thoughts on, there's so many changes that have taken place in the last, say, 10 years. And what are your thoughts on where the society is headed and where the quickening is going?
I think a really good question to ask on the air will be how they think the world will end. Mm-hmm. Now, I realize that my colleague across the aisle doesn't believe in global warming, but I can assure you it is warming. Whether it's a natural cycle or it's man-made, our planet is warming.
That is a significant
And I do a lot
change.
of travel. There are people in the Maldives who are about to be without a home because their island is going to be covered with water. Additionally, it's warming so much that typhoons are now becoming so deadly in the Pacific that they're completely leveling things down to the dirt, even things built well. So we're in a time of really radical change. We're in a time when I think we can no longer believe a great deal of what our government says. For example, we just had this big deal about what was it? I'm trying to recall about the hacking that went on.
Yes.
And not a word on the mainstream media about the fact that Anonymous claimed on the day prior to the hacking that, Wall Street's going to have a really perhaps rough time.
The New York Stock
tomorrow.
Exchange. Hacking
That's
the
right.
New York Stock Exchange is no joke.
That's right. And I think it was United Airlines and the New York Stock Exchange, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, all got hacked on the same day, and it was a coincidence, they say.
Internal technical issues, I think, was the canned answer that was given.
Please would be my answer. That's
Right.
too much coincidence
Yes,
for me.
exactly.
When I was young, you could believe what the FBI would come out and say, just like it was gold, but no longer.
And the news was the news.
The news was the news is right. That's right. What we get now is a carefully choreographed version of what they want us to hear.
It's now become a form of entertainment
That's right.
rather than a service to inform you of what you need to know what's going on in the world now. It's become its own form of entertainment, and I find that to just one solitary American's opinion, that's quite a shame.
Well, there are how many Republicans now running?
Seems to be Republican heavy.
There's about 15, I think. And who do we see? Donald Trump. And he's very entertaining.
He's very entertaining, and he has a lot of money, and that brings me to, my other point is that money seems to be the drive behind everything, rather than being truthful or telling people what they need to know. It's more about how much money can be made by this or that story.
Right. You're exactly right. I have never, ever been money driven. I am driven. That's hard to describe. How am I driven? I'm driven to have fun, right? That's what this is all about, fun, to me. And
I think that's what everybody is fired up about. I think a lot of the listeners, especially on Belgab, sense that this time it's purely for fun and that you have no bosses to report to. And because of that, I think that's why this return has the charge behind it that it does.
well, it's an encore performance. I'm 70 years old now, so hopefully I can still do it. We're going to find out.
We are going to find out. We're going to find out in just a couple of days on July 20th when you sit down with Graham Hancock and you can discuss his new book, The Forgotten Wisdom of Earth's Lost Civilization, Magicians of the Gods.
All right. We'll talk drugs with him, too.
His ayahuasca adventures.
Absolutely.
And his DMT adventures.
Sure.
That
We'll
I
talk
would love
Egypt.
to hear
You know,
about.
he's got some views on Egypt that are very controversial, and it's going to be fun. You know, I'm sure he's going to be a really fun interview. And by the way, I will, at least in the first few minutes of the show, bring Crystal Gale on.
Will you really?
Yes, sure. It's worth adding that Crystal gave me that lovely song,
Yes.
Midnight in the Desert.
Yes.
That's naming the new show. And so I will bring Crystal on the air and she'll have a word with everybody.
How perfect is that? I'm sure everyone will love to hear her voice again. And she continues on the road, right?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. She appears over the hill here in Vegas every now and then. And I've gone to a number of her concerts. She's really something.
So what did she think when you asked, can you name the show Midnight in the Desert after her song?
She said, oh, my God, I'd love to come on. So she's certainly honored. There's no question.
That's great.
And I'm honored. You should have seen the day she actually came out here to my house. We had lunch, and she handed me this song and said, I did this for you. Here you go.
I've heard her perform a live version of it, and one of the things that she said right before the song began was that it was one of the most fun songs for her to write.
Turned out actually to be a fair-sized hit, and a lot of people downloaded it. So it's not released in the normal way, but it's available for download, and I love it. I absolutely love the song.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves, prepare yourselves, get
for whatever's
your
going to
listening
happen.
devices ready for whatever's going to happen. Open Lines test July 19th at darkmatterdigitalnetwork.com. That starts at 9 p.m. Pacific?
That's right. We're going to do 2 hours, 9 to 11 on the 19th.
Okay.
And it's just going to be open lines.
We're just going to take a ride, have fun with it, see where it goes through the night.
Sure, that's it.
Sounds good to me. And then official kickoff July 20th, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight.
Correct.
With Mr. Graham Hancock. It's going to be a great time, and I can't thank you enough for taking this time with us to talk about your new show.
Thank you so much. Go Belgab.
Good night, Art.
Good night.